So the market is in a little pickle right now, and I thought I would share it with you guys because we are at a very critical point, and I wanted to ask you guys what you think is going to happen. For those that do not know, NASDAQ market has recently been pulling on back. The main reason has been because of this trade war. Trump has officially began this trade war with Canada and Mexico and a series of other countries that, of course, began to instill some fear in the stock market. I don't want to get into the whole logistics. This shouldn't be a surprise. Trump has made it very clear that this was part of his plan, so it made no sense in the first place that the markets were actually rallying as Trump was the president-elect. Now everyone is surprised that, oh no, he's actually doing what he said he was going to do, and markets are beginning to dive. Again, markets got ahead of itself. That's the market's fault. That's not anyone else's fault by any means. With that being said, with where we currently are right now, the market's in a pickle. Let me explain. NASDAQ, which is QQQ, this is the one-for-one NASDAQ ETF, has pulled on back about 10%. So a pullback of 10%, that means that now if it recovers, it offers about a 10% recovery. Let me ask you a very specific question. Well, what happens if the market pulls back an additional 10%? Because from where we are right now, we are in a pickle. We are 10% away from making new all-time highs because if markets recover, we can go back to previous highs and that offers 10% of potential recovery. Pretty good, right? So again, if you think that markets are going to recover, then maybe now is the time to begin to pay attention. I made a video about buying the dip yesterday and mistakes to avoid. But we also can't just think that the market is going to recover without taking downside risk into consideration, right? There's always two sides to every opportunity, and it would be naive to not acknowledge it. Well, what happens if we sell off? Just as much as if the market recovers 10% and makes new all-time highs, if the market from current price levels sells off 10%, that would officially put the US and the NASDAQ market in recession territory. For those that do not know, recession territory is a 20% pullback from previous all-time highs. So looking at the current price level that we're at, we're already down 10%. So we're at a potential or at a point where if we recover, we have 10% of potential recovery. If we sell off 10%, we now enter recession territory. What a freaking pickle. But again, to me, this is super exciting. I've made it very clear, especially if you're part of my LPP team, we don't like to carry trades overnight. So all the positions that you saw me short MSTR, I made $10,000 shorting MSTR on Friday. I shared my video. If you're part of my LPP team, you got to watch me trade live. I close out my trades because I understand that the market's very volatile during a time like this. And this is the very specific reason because in a given moment, the market's bearish, and if Trump, for some reason, postpones a tariff, markets will quickly recover. I don't want to expose myself to that kind of volatility. So again, I keep my trading simple and I close out the trade. But this really puts me in a very wonderful position every morning that when the market opens, depending on the market sentiment, if I see markets continuing to sell off, I'll continue to short. If I see markets beginning to recover, then I can begin to buy the dip and make money as markets recover, but still take profits because again, it's still very uncertain. This trade war, in my opinion, is nowhere close to being done. Inflation is beginning to pick up. Literally the only thing that I believe that can save the market from entering this recession is that if the Federal Reserve is pressured and almost forced to start cutting interest rates very aggressively. Just like we saw in 2020 to 2021 when the full market went into a full panic as the entire economy closed down due to the pandemic, the Federal Reserve was pressured to start cutting interest rates, making it super inexpensive to borrow money, and therefore businesses and individuals are more willing to spend money when it's cheap to borrow. That is the only scenario that I see that things can actually get better. Or if Trump just all of a sudden wakes up and is like, hey, actually this trade war thing, I'm just going to stop. Maybe at that point, market can finally bottom and conditions can resume to being more bullish. But you have to understand the different moving parts. As of right now, markets are bearish. Why? Because of this trade war, because of tensions that are going on, not just with our country, but now with different countries as they continue continue to renegotiate their trade. I'm sure a lot of you guys saw over the weekend, China now implemented a 100% tariff on Canada as well. Canada, supposedly over this weekend, is supposed to select a new liberal prime minister because Justin obviously stepped down early January of 2025, and he's been doing an absolute terrible job leading the country of Canada. With that being said, well, what can we expect maybe for the next few days? Well, one thing that I want to show you is I wanted to make sure that you understood where the market was at right now. Not to instill fear in you, but so you understand the different moving parts. It's not that things have to get worse, but it's that you can't be surprised if they do. And if things do get worse, I want you to understand that we can enter this recession territory, and that is a 20% drop from previous all-time highs. Bitcoin is also looking absolutely terrible. I mean, you can just see based off of the post of all of these crypto bros. I wanted to share this with you guys. It absolutely cracks me up. Michael Saylor believes that the United States should buy 4.2 million Bitcoin, 20% of the total supply, and that would cost roughly $350 billion. Of course, Michael Saylor, the biggest Ponzi scheme guy that there is right now in the market. I truly do believe that he will be one of the catalysts behind the crypto downfall because of what he is doing. Of course, this guy is going to try to convince anyone and everything. I mean, he's done it in the past where he tried to convince Elon Musk that he should turn his balance sheet into Bitcoin back in 2020. He will do anything to try to line his pockets. This is the part that baffles me about all of this. It's a very, very simple question. A lot of crypto guys, a lot of Bitcoin guys like to compare Bitcoin to gold. They're like, well, just like gold, you can't make more of it. That's always the comparable. I don't ever remember people that are invested in gold trying to convince me the value of gold and why I should pour every dollar into it. Is it just me? If it's so valuable, why do you need to convince everyone that they need to buy it? To me, that's not valuable. You're trying to create the value. You're trying to create the scarcity behind it. There is no utility. There is no value. You didn't want government involvement, and now you were begging for the government to create a Bitcoin reserve. They created this Bitcoin reserve, and guess what? Bitcoin fell even harder because they admitted that they have no intention of buying Bitcoin. They're simply going to work with the Bitcoin that they have seized. Everything that everyone has ever talked about the value of Bitcoin and crypto has completely shown to not be true. And guess what's happening? Everything is falling apart. Right now we're at 82,000, and don't get it twisted. We have way lower lows to go. If we break 80,000, the next support is 70,000. And even Michael Saylor has said it on his Twitter himself, where you can't be surprised if Bitcoin continues to sell off to $70,000 per coin. Things are looking bad, and we all know this is not an opinion, it's a fact. When market conditions are bearish, it does not give crypto the environment to thrive. That is not an opinion, that's a fact. No one cares about these bullshit coins or your bullshit AI coins or altcoins, whatever it is that you guys want to call them, when they're focused and concerned about paying rent, putting food on the table, focused on getting a job or inflation going up. This is a type of market that only thrives during conditions when people have FU money, when they're able to borrow money at super low rates. And yes, these things are able to do very well because there's a ton of money going around. But once concern and fear begins to be instilled into the market, you can't be surprised that these things begin to fall apart. And just like we said, it's not like we just started talking about this. We've said it so many times before. In every single bull run, there's always a 50 to 80% crash. 50 to 80% crash. And guess what? I think this time it's going to be a lot worse because of people like Michael Saylor. They inflated the price so much within such a short period of time that this time the amount of people that are going to get margin called, I'm sure some of you guys that are going to be commenting, they're like, you just don't understand crypto. Crypto is the future. Again, well, there's a reason you're getting margin called because you bought too heavy, you became too over leveraged at overbought levels, and now you're paying the price. Just like Michael Saylor, everyone likes to view him as a god when it comes down to Bitcoin investment because of how much Bitcoin he owns. Do you know what his average purchase price is for Bitcoin? 67,000. Look at his most recent Twitter post. He thinks that Bitcoin can hit lows of 70,000. You're telling me that at that point, he would only be up $3,000 per coin. It's mind-boggling. And if we go lower than that, because again, he doesn't know where the bottom is, what is going to happen to Microstrategy once Bitcoin and their holdings go red? Just like last time, if we pull it up on the week chart, it went from 131 to lows of $13 per share. This time, I think it could be the actual downfall of Microstrategy. I think this time so many people are invested. There's so much money in Microstrategy because of all the hope that if this thing begins to crash, it can put Microstrategy in such a bad position where it's going to get removed off of the NASDAQ. It's going to get removed off of anything and everything. And I think that even having Michael Saylor in that crypto summit event in the White House will now be looked back at and be like, wow, that was a terrible decision to have this Ponzi scheme leader at the White House. Again, if something is so valuable, they wouldn't have to convince you that you need to invest all of your money into it. If it's that valuable and if it's that scarce, again, it should sell itself, right? Super, super simple. So I'm super excited to see how low Microstrategy ends up going based off of the current price level that we're at of 82,000. As long as Bitcoin continues to hold here at around 80,000, Microstrategy should be at $250 to maybe $230 per share by the time the market opens. So again, if you think that things were looking bad for Microstrategy, you have seen nothing yet because Bitcoin hasn't even started crashing. It's showing signs of a bear market, early signs of a bear market, but we're not crashing yet. We're not on an active sell-off. Once the active sell-off begins, that is where the fun begins, shorting this piece of shit stock Microstrategy. We all know, again, it's no actual business. All it does is it buys Bitcoin with money that it borrows against its investors. And there's a reason that we have made so much money shorting this piece of shit stock. And it's simply because it's a terrible company. It's a ticking time bomb. And I'm so excited that from the beginning at $500 per share, that's when I started talking about it, we're able to capture its downfall. And in my opinion, it's just the beginning. So again, I hope to see you for tomorrow's live trading session. If you want to tune on in to watch me trade live and short Microstrategy, you get to see all of my good trades, all of my bad trades. Second link in the description down below. And I hope to see you there. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below, drop a thumbs up, subscribe. And like always, let's make sure that we end the year on a green note. Take care, team.